Hey, welcome to episode 4 of One More Rep with Coach Walker. I am your host, Coach Walker. Today's episode is brought to you, like always, by High Power Performance. Maximize, improve, excel, train like you mean it. High Power Performance at outlook.com. Check us out. Shoot me an email. Let's get to training. But today's topic, we're talking about youth strength and conditioning and athletic development. Basically, just looking at what that topic is overall, and just kind of touching on some of the things that are going on in the world of youth strength and conditioning right now. But just kind of jumping into it. Growing up for me, I don't know how old you are, but I'm old enough to remember where quote-unquote strength and conditioning for kids, athletic development was getting outside and going to play in the neighborhood. You had a bunch of kids outside. We would play every sport under the sun. Kickball, baseball, battle on the bounce, basketball, flag football. We called it killer man football, whatever. You played tackle, two-hand touch, freeze tag, all these different games to where you worked on all the aspects of movement, primal movement. Thinking about jumping, lunging, squatting, pushing yourself up, pulling yourself up, twisting, turning, landing, creating force, stopping force, all these different things. And if you did some boxing, you learn those skill sets as well. So it's just everything that goes into sports as we see them today. As a kid 10, 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, you just did more outdoors that wasn't specifically structured once you started playing team sports. That's different, obviously, but you did a lot more unstructured things that that helped you build the fundamental foundation that would help you become a better athlete, just because you moved without restriction. It wasn't all these different things to where now you're being in the house in front of the TV a lot, in front of some type of screen. We watched our Saturday morning cartoons and all that good stuff. But after that, you're outside with the basketball, the football, whatever. You go in the house long enough to get some water and get yelled at for being in the house, letting the air out the house, those types of things. So, and you would have to get told to come in the house. We were outside playing, developing these skill sets. So that was strength and conditioning unnamed at the time. Fast forward to now, a lot of things there's more science and there's more research that has been done to kind of pinpoint different stages of what development should look like, and we're going to talk about those things here. But you also have more technology, you have more education, you have more knowledge around the subject of what youth strength and conditioning and athletic development should look like. So for me as a strength and conditioning coach, I typically like to start with athletes no younger than probably 8 years old. I have trained athletes as young as 6. Wasn't by design. The parent told me they were 7, and then as we were training, it came out the kid was 6. But he was a great athlete on the field, and they wanted to give him they wanted to push him a little bit more. But in those situations with young athletes, you have to be smart. But let's jump into, the 7 stages of athletic development, but we're only going to talk about 4 of them just because those 4 pertain specifically to youth strength and conditioning, youth development. So the first stage is active start, and that goes from essentially 0 to 6, but realistically, obviously, you're not having a baby train. So when they start moving 1 to 2 years old, up to 6 years old, and this is like I was saying before, just getting up, moving. You have your basic play. You have intro to movement patterns that are somewhat specific to sports, but not so much. You're talking about gross motor skills, holding the ball, bouncing the ball, holding the baseball bat, catching a little bit. Obviously, they're not good. As they get older, closer to 5 or 6, the catching might become a little bit better. But you're just introduction. No set parameters, no real expectations, just the activity of introduction to movement. Because again, they're under 6, you're still getting your legs up under you. And so at this stage, you can do a lot of different things. I know my son specifically, I remember it was his second Halloween. He was dressed up as he was a doctor, a surgeon, and I was dressed up as his patient. It's a great time for me, but it was the first time he had ever like really run distance, and he had just started running when we were outside trick or treating. He just started laughing or whatever. Okay, well, let's see how far he can run without stopping or whatever. So it was no, okay, keep going, keep going. I just ran next to him to make sure he didn't fall. So I would have my arm out, put my hand out. He didn't fall. I think he ran either a quarter mile or half a mile before he decided to stop. And so I was never trying to force him to run, but that's that development stage, that active start. He just wanted to run, and that was his distance. He ran, and then from there we just kind of built things in here and there, because he had always been some level of active up until that point, and still to this day. Just because I would move him around and understand movement, understand what his motor development needs to be. So we want to make sure that he's on pace throughout from the very beginning. So those types of things are always built in, but he was never like pushed to say, do this thing at any age. So our next stage in the seven stages of athletic development is fundamentals. So this takes place from the age of 6 to 9 years old for boys and 6 to 8 years old for girls. I guess the thought process is that window is a little bit longer for boys to get that, to maximize the benefits, and then sometimes girls also they'll develop earlier, and they might grasp some of the fundamentals better. I don't know what the thought process is from the article that I pulled this from. But in this stage, you're looking at participation in well-structured activities that develop skills and overall motor skills. So basically, like your youth soccer leagues, your pee-wee baseball leagues, basketball and things like that. If you like football, you're gonna have maybe flag football. You might even do contact football. I wouldn't for my kid, but to each his own. But basically, this is the point where, okay, you have some structure around it. You have some very good coaches in place. I've had the experience where my son and my nephew, they were in a basketball program that lacked so much structure that I had to pull him from the program just because it wasn't well structured. He was just out there doing whatever he wanted to do. And me, one, being a dad, but two, being a strength and conditioning coach, I can't have you just running around like a wild man with no structure when I am putting you in this place to learn something. You can run around at home. I can go ahead and be your coach at home. I want you, when we put you in a structured environment, we want you to learn how to be coached by somebody else and learn the fundamentals that come along with that sport, whatever sport that is, and you just kind of get them ready for what they're trying to do. And in this 6 to 8 year old range for boys and girls, this is where you can introduce body weight exercises, realistically even going back to that 0 to 6, starting around maybe 2 years old, like just basic stuff. Like if you're working out, you can have them doing squats and push-ups and stuff like that. Obviously, it's not going to be as coordinated as you want it to be, but again, everything is exposure from this at this time. And so when they're looking at this fundamental stage, now, okay, I'll have you doing some more body weight stuff. If I have some light dumbbells, 3 pounds, 2 pounds, I'll have you do some stuff with those or whatever. But basically let you really feel how your body moves, whether it's sprinting forward, backpedaling, jumping side to side, getting the concept of doing the jumping jack, making the A and the I, all those types of things. Doing the sit-up and those types of movements, lunging, jumping, landing, seeing what it feels like for your body to hop like a frog, whatever it is, you're doing all those types of things. And then when you're talking about it from a well-structured activity, it should be fun for the kid. It should be enjoyable. It should make them feel like, okay, I am succeeding. They should have some struggles here and there, but it should be more successes than struggles, just because at this age, it's all about having fun. Now, if you feel like you have that phenom on your hand. I don't know how old he is now, but the kid Blaze, he's fast as all get out. His parents recognized early on that what his special gifts were. His training, from what I've seen over the years on the internet, has been a lot more structured from the beginning. And not to say that he didn't have the play time, but I just know he's doing some things that other kids aren't, because he's blessed in a different way. His God-given talent, they're maximizing that to the fullest, and it looks like they're doing a great job and being smart about it. But for most other kids, get the fundamental patterns down, well-structured program that's going to help them get that. And so number 3 on this list is the third phase, or the stage that we're looking at, is learn to train. So this is where we're looking at 9 to 12 years old, and that's for boys, and girls are going to be that 8 to 11. So the girls can start about a year earlier, so it still gives you about a 3-year window. So, and this is where now you develop the foundational sports skills at this stage. And then so what you think about, this is where, for this whole thing from 0 to now, but even specifically at this 9 to 12 going up, this is where you start thinking long-term athlete development. So LTAD, LTAD, whatever you want to call it, but this is what you start thinking about, to where, okay, my son, my daughter, my child is going to be playing sports. They like sports. This is what they are driven by. They enjoy it. It's fun. How do we develop them long term? And so that can be, now at this age, get them a personal trainer, strength and conditioning coach, to where now they can learn how to properly train. If you decide that you don't want to go the route of hiring someone outside of the household, do your research and look at people who know what they're doing. Don't mimic adult exercises necessarily. Some of those things are good. The movement patterns are going to be the same, but don't do it like you would train an adult. Do things that are fun. Definitely your primal movement patterns, your hinges, your lunges, your jumping, your squatting, all those types of things, your pushing, your lifting. Do those types of patterns, because now you are going to develop them long term. Structurally, they're going to be better, because they're not going to have many physical limitations, as far as just keep it at limitations, because you're developing an overall structurally sound child. They're going to be strong. They can push up. They can push overhead. They can do a push up. They can do a squat. They can do a lunge. They can do a jumping jack. They can jump down off of a step. They can jump up on a step. They can sprint forward. They can run backwards. They can hop side to side. They can shuffle side to side. All those types of things. Just make sure that they have all those fundamentals, because they transfer to pretty much every sport, whether you're doing tennis, basketball, soccer, lacrosse, football, basketball, all these different things, sprinting, track and field. So just get them involved and let them learn these movement patterns, get them trained up. Your implements that you should be using at this age, you're looking at bodyweight exercises, resistance bands, dumbbells, maybe some kettlebells. Barbell I would stay away from, except to introduce it. There's no real reason at this age where they should really be doing anything barbell related, just because of the average, the training barbell I think is like 35 pounds. And then your average barbell in most gyms, commercial gyms and in private gyms, is going to be 45 pounds. 9 to 12 years old, 8 to 11 years old, you don't really need that. Now, there are some kids, again, you're going to have your kids that are your phenoms or your special cases that can handle that, but most kids start them off with weights that can be used in unilateral motions, things that you can teach proper body mechanics, to where if they drop a medicine ball, it hits the ground. It doesn't really hurt too much. If they use a resistance band, you can monitor the amount of weight. You can set the distance. You can do all these different things to where you can make sure that it's optimal for that kid, and you just teach proper body mechanics and movement patterns. I know I have a top level soccer player now. He started with me when he was 11. And that's what we did. I introduced the barbell, but if you were to go back and look at our videos, it's a lot of medicine ball work, dumbbells, kettlebells, and body weight, and we have some bands now. Everything I listed before, that's what we're using, just because that's going to maximize the potential of that kid and minimize your risk of injury. And right now, he's one of the top soccer players in Ohio and probably in the country. So the fourth stage we're talking about here, and this is going to be one we stop. We're not going to go into stages 5, 6, and 7 because those you're past the stages of athletic development for youth. Now you're getting into young adult and adult. But this last stage is train to train. And so this takes place from the ages of 12 to 16 for boys and 11 to 15 years old for girls. So now you're building the engine. So now you're going to take advantage of puberty and this stage of adaptation, to where the body is adapting really fast, can adapt really fast to learning what you're teaching. To where if you want to teach them the mechanics of running, your falling starts, all that stuff, teach it here, because you're going to maximize it. Drill it home, because it's going to maximize the capacity to master it. Well, not master it, but really get a good grasp on it. If you're trying to lay the foundation for a strong, resilient athlete, this is where you really start to drill home those workouts. The things that you did in stage 3, where you're introducing the weights and things like that, now you're ramping it up. Now you're adding slightly heavier dumbbells, heavier medicine balls into the mix, heavier resistance bands. You're not trying to go balls to the wall, but you're increasing the load because the body is in a stage of adaptation. In all of these stages, you always want to be aware of what you're doing. You want to be aware of the growth plates, because you don't want to do any damage to any of those things, because you damage a growth plate, you can mess the kid up for a long time to come. So be smart about everything you're doing, no matter what stage you're in. But in this stage, now you've been working for let's say you spent those years, 8 to 12 years old, those 4 years of that 4-year window of time, using your dumbbells, kettlebells, medicine balls, and resistance bands and bodyweight exercises, and you can even throw the sled in there just to, as a caveat. And so let's say you did a great job with that. Now you carried it over, because none of that stuff has to go away. It can stay forever. Now you're at 11 to 16 years old. Now you can start introducing the barbell. Simple movements, how to control the barbell, what your body position is supposed to be like, whether you're pulling from the floor, pushing overhead. If you like to back squat, I don't necessarily do a lot of it with any of my clients, especially my youth athletes. You can do that. Introduce your trap bar. If you trap bar, hex bar, introduce that now, because now you can get explosive. You can really get the biggest bang for your buck doing those exercises at this stage. But especially for young men, you are having the testosterone into the picture. Now they're getting that burst of testosterone. Maximize it. Get that young man in the weight room. Get him out there lifting, because now he's going to get stronger, faster. You're going to see the development. Young ladies should be training. They should be lifting weights. They should be doing trap bar deadlifts. They should be jumping. They should be squatting. They should be doing bench press. They should be doing everything the young boys are doing, because their sports require it just the same. They need to be strong. They need to be fast. They need to be bigger for some sports. They need to be resilient. They need to prevent ACL injuries and everything that you can think, okay, the boys sports need this. Say the exact same thing for the girls sports, just because the requirements are the same. Some of it's just as physical, say for the soccer, the lacrosse, all those things. So maximize the growth potential for young men and young women at this age and at all stages in this process, because you're just going to create a great athlete going forward. So those are those stages. So let's talk about how these things apply to kids and to the young student athletes, or just the quote unquote kid weekend warrior in your life. So recently on here about maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago now, the Flying Pig took place. If you've kept up, if you've watched the national news or whatever, it was Flying Pig took place in Cincinnati. There was a 6-year-old kid that ran the race with his 7 other family members, including his 2 parents, and is obviously a marathon. The Flying Pig, if you're not aware, it has 3 different legs of it, but this leg that they ran with this 6-year-old was a 26.2 mile marathon. He finished it. The family finished it. They finished it in like 8 hours, and there was a lot of opinions about why was this kid allowed to run the marathon, because there were reports that he was crying, he was in pain, all these different things that people were talking about. There were different reports. The family, I think it's specifically the dad, he released a statement saying some of the reports were exaggerated to where at the pace that they were running, the interactions with these people were saying that they had firsthand accounts of the kids being in crying the entire time. They actually had like just 30-second windows of time as they were running, as the people were passing the family, because again, when they finished the race 8 hours later, everything has shut down by that time. Now, their argument is, as a family, they let the kid run because he was adamant about running with the family, because they had 2 of the kids had run the race the year before without the family, and I guess according to the race organizer, this family has participated in the Flying Pig before without paying, which they call banditing, and they figure if they let them participate under the actually paying and allow the entire family to do it, they would have the protection of their medical provisions and things like that. So medical team, fluids, and anything else that comes along with that. So with everything surrounding that, if we backtrack and go to the 7 stages of development, kid's 6 years old. That puts him in an active start where he's just learning the motor skills and things like that, and at the top end, he's doing the fundamentals, to where he's learning or participating in a well-structured activity that helps develop the fundamental skills and overall motor skills. 26.2 miles is a long time to run for, backtrack slightly. Now, the family said that he participated in their training to lead up to it, but like I said, 26.2 miles is a long distance to run. There are a lot of adults that will never try it. There are adults that do attempt it, and it beats them down. The recovery process for that can be long. I've known some people who've run some marathons, and they are great runners, phenomenal runners, and it just takes them a long time to recover, about a week of recovery, just to get back to stasis. So I don't know the family's background as far as like who knows what, but if they're all just runners, they've been running for decades, whatever it looks like, if there's a coach, a personal trainer, some type of wellness person involved. But for me personally, that's not something I would have let my son do as far as that distance. Now, I would definitely let him go out and run, because we have the Beast of the East Fork mud run or obstacle course race scheduled for June 4th in East Fork, Ohio. So like, that's a 3-mile race. Like, it's his first one. He's 7. And he's in that fundamental stage. He's been with me, a strength and conditioning coach, for 7 years of his life, his entire life. So I've laid that foundation. We're training now. We're doing different things: push-ups, jumping jacks, squats, sit-ups, all the stuff that you can think of in moderation and small doses to get him ready. So I just hope that kid is okay. I mean, the way the story reads, it didn't seem like he had any major issues after. Definitely was sore, definitely that stuff. He was crying, but the parents said he was crying because he had failed. I know what it did do for the Flying Pig organizers is it made them stick to their heart. And now going forward, they're going to stick to a hard line of 18 plus to run a marathon, which I understand from a legal standpoint and just from a safety standpoint for the participants. But also, there are some strong runners, some strong cross country runners that are younger and that maybe that 15, 16, 17-year-old age range that you're missing out on letting in. I think a better way to cover yourself as the Flying Pig or as any marathon is to have a waiver that you sign, but you have that asks specific questions about the type of training you've done, to where, let's say, by God forbid, something does go wrong, even if you are of age, and let's say they come back to sue you, well, and you have that waiver to say, well, you checked off, said you did X, Y, and Z training to prepare for this, and you're covered. So I think having that age range, maybe even at 15 to 18, 15 and up, makes more sense to me. Just thinking about my mindset on how the waiver can be set up, but that's their event. They're figuring out what's best for them, and I wish everybody in this case all the best. You never want to see a kid get injured. You don't see anybody get injured, and especially for something like this, I think the only drawback that I could see coming from something like this is later on down the line, the kid burning out on running. But also the flip side of it is he could grow to love it. It could be his passion, and as long as he's injury free, he can run forever. So overall, I just, from a safety standpoint, if he was going to run, I would have chosen the 5K or maybe even the 10K. I would have stayed away from the marathon. But again, as long as he came out at the end of the race positively, healthy, still in one piece, these parents, they know their child, so that's their decision. Parents have done worse in the history of life, and they will do worse going forward. So just keep him safe, keep the kids safe. I mean, from looking at these stages here, he was well above where you should have been on that stage. He shouldn't have been out there. But again, they live with this kid. They make the decisions that work best for their family, and I wish them all the best. I just know that me and my son, we're getting ready for the Beast of the East Fork on June 4th, and we will be ready to get out there and get muddy, get dirty. But for youth strength and conditioning, the biggest thing is be smart about whatever you're doing. Know what stage your kid is. Be realistic about what your kid can do and what your kid can't do. Don't operate with, okay, my kid has my genetics, he should be able to do this or she should be able to do that. The biggest thing is look at them for who they are as an individual. If you're going to train them, do all the research in the world to get the right information. If you're hiring somebody, make sure that they have the right credentials and the right temperament to train your child, because it does take patience. It does take a different approach than if I am working with an adult or even a high-level athlete that's at 17, 18 years old compared to a 6 to 12-year-old, because the attention span is different. The attention span is different of the kid, because I can't just talk to him or her in terms of what the exercise is. I got to make it slightly fun. I'm not always the best at that, but I can get the results from the kid that you need. And so it's just about that connection. It's a different type of connection that you need to make with the kid at that age, because you're talking about different things throughout that time frame, that half an hour, 45 minutes that you're going to spend with them, maybe even an hour. But just be smart about it. Have the kids' best interest in it. If they're not having fun, if they're not enjoying the process, it might be time to back off. And just remember to diversify the sports they participate in. There's no reason to specialize at 9, 10, 11 years old unless they are just diehard about soccer, basketball. get them involved in other sports, even if it's just recreationally, to where, okay, their main sport is basketball, but on the weekends at the house, we're playing soccer or we're playing baseball, just so they get a feel for it and they understand and they can do something else. And it just, that cross training just makes them better at their main sport. It can help with conditioning, it can help with footwork, all these different things. So just be smart about what you're doing when it comes to youth athletics and youth strength and conditioning and athletic development. So take care. Remember, train like you mean it. Maximize, improve, excel. This has been Coach Walker. Take care.